Someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy. We can help.
Welcome to another edition of In Another Opinion, a public information program focused on the communities of color. I'm your host, Peter Wells. What is the status these days of refugees in Rhode Island? And what countries have obtained refugee status here in Rhode Island? My guest today is Omar Ba, founder and executive director of the Refugee Dream Center of Providence, Rhode Island. Omar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's an honor to be in Another Opinion.
No, I think the honor is mine to have you here. Tell me a bit about the Refugee Center.
Well, I founded it to help refugees in their adjustment process into American society. And if you know, you can recall, I was a refugee myself 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And after going through the adjustment process, I could read and write English. I could, understand a lot of stuff. And I realized majority of refugees do not have even that luxury of understanding English. They cannot even read and write. Most of them cannot read and write in their own languages. So my thought was, the federally funded agencies helping them for 6 months was not enough. I wanted to continue that process for as much as they needed. Right. So what we do is to continue services, do English language. I mentor about 50 youth. I do English language for adult kids. And we also have case management where people are supported on their daily needs.
So is this full-time staff or volunteers? Or?
Yeah, we have a combination of both volunteers and full-time staff. Currently we have about 7 full-time staff and 1 part-time, and really? A board and a lot of volunteers.
So, and that all takes place at Lockwood?
Yes, on Lockwood Avenue. Oh, Lockwood Street, actually.
Yeah.
Providence.
Yeah, I've been there many times for DARE, and in the past there have been other agencies that have been in there and left. But that's interesting. So you have 7 full-time and then other volunteers and so on and so forth. Well, tell me, if you have a number, I don't know if you have a number on the top of your head, but how many people do you work with? How many clients do you work with on a regular basis?
This past year, 2019, we served over 300 refugees. Wow. And they're mostly from the Middle East and Africa. And these are Syrians, Somali, Congolese, and the majority are mostly Congolese and Syrians. But there are people from all over the world, like people from Afghanistan, people from Burma, and Iraq, and Burundi, Liberia, from all over the world, but mostly from Africa and the Middle East. Yeah. There are some people from the Caribbean, like Haiti, that come in to seek services too.
Now, but Haiti isn't, are they considered refugees?
Well, not in the official form of scheme of things, but because some of them apply for asylum. So asylum, once somebody is given asylum status, then automatically they have the same status as a refugee. Oh, okay. So it becomes similar, the same world here.
Okay, very good. I didn't realize that. I knew that some countries had status and others didn't. Yes, especially here in Rhode Island.
Absolutely.
I think every couple of years you read in the paper that Senator Reid is working to help somebody from a particular country, maybe Liberia or I don't know, probably not Liberia. Maybe it was Liberia, I guess.
Yeah, he did an amazing work. Actually, because of his contribution, Liberia, they had a great improvement in their fight for that protective status. Thousands of Liberians were in the process of losing the status, and it was approved this past year. He did that great job.
So what benefit does a person accrue if they're considered to be a refugee?
Great. So, if you observe following, there are over 70 million people displaced around the world, and about 25 million of those are registered as refugees by the UN, by the United Nations. Okay. And only less than 1% of those are resettled to third countries. So these are people who are in camps, who are waiting there sometimes for 10, 15, 20 years. And countries like America, Australia, some countries in Europe, Canada, obviously, come in out of humanitarian grounds, not by force or any reason. Out of humanitarian grounds, come to these camps or come to these countries where refugees are living in miserable urban conditions and decide, oh, we'll take a small number and take them to our country. And that is how refugees end up in the U.S. So they are not like the regular immigrant that will come for them on their own. These are people that the State Department goes out there and bring them to this country. Very small number. For instance, is less than 30,000 that comes to the U.S. And actually the cap for this year, 2020, is less than 20,000 that are going to come. Initially, it used to be close to 100,000 or about that, but because of the new administration, it's much less. So that, imagine 30,000 or 20,000 compared to 25 million out there. So that's how the refugees end up in the U.S. Once they enter, they're given a status that gives them the path to citizenship. So after 1 year of arrival, they are qualified to apply and adjust to green card status. And after 5 years, they are qualified to apply for citizenship status. And that's how I came here in 2007, and in 2012 I became a citizen. Oh, and immediately you enter, you are qualified to work, you can get a job, you have workers' employment authorization, you have a social security number, and you can work as much as you want. But you can vote 5 years later if you become a citizen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do most refugees tend to want to become citizens?
Yes, most, because, I mean, there's no place for them to go. This is the only country they have. I mean, some refugees, especially the younger generation, were not only forced out of their countries, but they were denied the most fundamental right of a citizen, which is birthright. They were not born in their countries, they were born in camps. Imagine being born in a camp, the country doesn't recognize you because you are in some sort of a camp in a tent city, and your own country denied you to be born there. And so they're just floating. The first time they can call a place my country is when they arrived here. So their biggest preoccupation is to become citizens. When they arrive, they work hard, they try to comply with taxes and contribute. They want to contribute to the country. They don't want to be in trouble in any way. That's why at any period of their adjustment status, they adjust because they would have complied with everything. But their biggest challenge is the cultural thing, the culture, the economics, because they are the only group, immigrant population that comes to this country that was not prepared for their arrival. Because it's just something happens abruptly, you are forced out of your country. And in most cases, it's due to extreme violence. There is violence, torture, rape, a lot of things that was done to you or you witnessed. And you are not prepared for that journey. You end up in a state, let's say Rhode Island, that probably you never heard of. And then now you have to adjust to everything to become like a regular American. So that's why it's different from the regular immigrant, because you are not prepared and then you go to a place that you don't know. Now you have to not only struggle with your past traumas, but you have to struggle with new adjustment stressors such as economics and other stuff.
So what programs does the Refugee Center offer?
Great. So we offer adult education classes like ESL, English for learners of other languages, because we realized that once the honeymoon is over, when people arrive here after 6 months, they become very busy. They at work and they get stuck. Sometimes the employment places don't give them chances to access services. So we organize these evening classes where people after work can come to. And women can also bring their children and learn while people are helping their kids with homework. And they feel they can access the services for as much as they want, even after 2, 3, 5 years. And we also offer youth mentoring, because we realized that refugee kids, especially those in their teen years, are kids that yearn, they have so much need and urge to belong. It's very easy for kids to slide into gangs and other places where they can easily be in trouble. So what we do is we bring them to the center after school, mostly middle and high schoolers, and we bring in kids from American local schools, so that we are serving two communities, refugee kids and kids from the American community, so that they learn from each other. They're learning the same thing at the same time. We bring in guest speakers, we teach them on topics of leadership and social responsibility, to the extent that even if they are just left to interact within themselves, they are not hanging out there in a negative environment that can put them in trouble. Then we do case management, people coming in. You might have seen a client who disappeared from the center. 2 years later, they come back. Oh, I lost my job. I need to look for a job. I don't know how to do the application online. So those kinds of things, helping people to apply for jobs, helping people to move from one apartment to the other. and we receive a lot of donations, so especially toiletries that are expensive, and distribute them. And also to serve as a cultural center where people can just feel at home, and multicultural interaction from the Middle Easterns and Africans, Christians and Muslims, people from every denomination interacting and feeling at home so that they are not isolated. And I think that's a good way of not only contributing to the American diversity, but to help them feel at home to adjust better into American society.
Let me ask you this. What is the biggest impediment that you could identify, let's say, for finding employment for refugees? What is the hardest thing to get over?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, the primary most hardest thing is the cultural difference.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, because refugees have a lot of skills where they're coming from, but because of the untranslatable skills that they have, it becomes a problem. For instance, somebody may be a medical doctor in Iraq, and they come in here, let's say they don't speak English.
Right.
Or even if they speak English, the medical requirements is that you must have medical licensure here in the U.S.
Yes.
Somebody, let's say, is 50 years, they don't want to go to school for another 4 or 5 years to become a medical doctor after having so much experience as a doctor there. So it becomes a cultural problem of wanting to go back to school. It's also a stigma for somebody that age to go to school, but also just the fact that the difference in how medicine operates somewhere else and here. So that's how it's always difficult for people to morph into the workplace here. That's one of the things we do with them, you know, teach people who are ready to go into the workforce. We teach them how to not go to work late. Even 1 minute is late, we teach them about that. We teach them about basic things like eye contact, which is sometimes a big problem for people from the Middle East and Africa. Not everybody, but in general terms. We also teach them about handshake, how it should be strong, walking fast, not picking up the neighbor's telephone, things like that. These are a barrage of cultural things that affect refugees' sustainability in the workplace, because sometimes people easily get fired because they went to heard the telephone ring and they went to pick it up, and then the person said, "Oh, I didn't pick up my telephone." Or maybe sometimes people say things, ask questions, people get offended, so people are experiencing trauma. Sometimes just petty bickering at work based on cultural differences. So I think culture is the biggest problem, and that's what we try to tackle as much as we can.
Let me ask you this. Would you say that there's probably more men or males that get employment versus women that are coming in that are refugees?
Yeah.
And culturally, I imagine that has something to do with the fact that in their country, the woman would not work outside of the home. She would be in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right, spot on, absolutely. In most cases, actually, I think there are more refugee women than men, because in most cases, when the war comes, men are killed or fighting, perpetrators. And families come together, but there are a lot of single women or more women than men. But in general terms, more men tend to get employment here, or more first get into the workforce than the women. And that is absolutely, as you stated, in most of these cultures, the women work, but they work domestically at home.
Right.
And there's also this notion where the men tend to have that hierarchy of being the head and then decider of everything. And then the kind of posture, even the men working and bringing home, taking care of that family, that makes them powerful. And then the kind of safe face to feel that they regain their dignity to take care of them. So in most cases, the man gets the job first, and then before they notice that there's a big economic stressor, then the woman starts working too. But that's a big challenge, and we're trying to improve as much as we can. So
one of the things that I know youngsters sometimes have had a problem in public schools, especially youngsters that happen to be Muslim, and they put on the hijab, and that's a problem in the school, well, some schools, maybe not all schools. Are adults faced with the same thing as it relates to work?
Well, I mean,
especially if they're a female.
That's one of the problems. You know, I've seen some kids in high schools, you know, start removing their hijab and put some sort of scarf. It is not synonymous to a hijab. So in some way, partially covering the hair but not covering. So it's because they have to belong, because they get bullied in the school system. It's sometimes gets vicious for these kids. That's why they force themselves to belong, and that's why it's also easy for them to get into a negative company.
Do their parents understand?
Their parents have no idea. So these kids are literally on their own. Some parents are involved, some parents understand, but in most cases, there are parents who are very busy working and who do not speak English. You send them letters at home from the school system, it doesn't work. And then even I want to have a challenge with the school system. You know, you send letters, let's say, in 2 languages, English and Spanish, and that doesn't solve all the problem.
No.
And then interpreting is a problem. You cannot have a kid having problem at school and then go home, expect the same kid to interpret for the parents. It may not be very accurate.
Yeah.
So it's similar with the adults too. Sometimes people go for interviews. In as much as we don't have the evidence or to prove that, we know that it's very unlikely for some woman with her veil to get an employment. There was this guy from Iran, Mohammed. He had to change his name to Mo in his resume in order to start getting jobs, because people rejected him everywhere just because of his name and his resume. So he changed it to Mo. So just an example how sometimes those unconscious biases for employers happen. And then in most cases, people don't even get responses. So we're trying to adjust. That's why actually part of our role is not only to work for the refugee community, but try to bridge between 2 communities, bring in the American community, bring in that kind of interaction to co-educate each other and build a bridge.
Unfortunately, I think some of these employers, it's not unconscious, it's purposely done. But that's just my opinion, because they, for some reason, have taken on the attitude of this administration. This president has basically declared war on Muslim countries, and obviously Americans pick up on that and end up doing the same thing, which is obviously wrong. Let me ask you this, Omar. Do you have partners, organizations that partner with the Dream Center?
Yeah, so what we do is we have close partnerships with an organization called the International Institute. Now it's called Dorcas International Institute. When I came 12 years ago, they resettled me. So what they do is they do the initial resettlement. When refugees come, they receive them, they help them for the initial months of their arrival. And so we coordinate, the people coming from Dorcas to us, and then if there are services that we can offer that they are not offering, we share that kind of interaction. So they are one of our closest partners. We also partner with the Providence Granola Project, called the Beautiful Day.
Okay, yes.
Now, I think they changed their name to only the Providence Granola Project. They employ mostly, I think, predominantly only refugees. They make the granola bars, they sell them all across the country. Very successful brand made by refugees.
Well, where is it located, do you know?
It's on Devil Square, but they use the kitchen at Amos House.
Okay, all right.
And it's really phenomenal. They employ a lot of our clients. We have that kind of partnership. And then there's this organization called the Catholic Diocese of Providence. They used to resettle refugees, but they do mostly case management around refugees. We coordinate with them also. And on the broader context of things, we have a lot of employers like the Lifespan. They employ dozens of refugees in different sectors like cleaning, house, a lot of room keeping, a lot of other areas, CNAs. And then the Falvey, which is very close to this place, it's a linen company that does cleaning of linens. They also employ dozens of refugees. So we have a lot of partners across the board we work with.
Now, tell me a bit about the book that you wrote. I understand that you're an author. So tell us more about the book. What is the name of the book, and what's it about?
Great. Well, the book is called Africa's Hell on Earth, The Ordeal of an African Journalist. I was a reporter at the age of 21, a newspaper reporter. And when I was a reporter, that coincided with the time when the Gambia, which is the smallest country on the mainland of Africa, had very weird and terrible dictator who was killing so many people and behaving in a very conformist way. And a lot of people disappeared, a lot of people were tortured and illegally detained, a lot of bad things were happening. And as a young reporter, I was writing a lot about these things, and that ran me into a lot of trouble. I was put in his prisons and tortured. I still have torture marks because of the kind of bayonet wounds I had. And they used to beat me with the gun butt, the head of the gun, AK-47, until I lost consciousness. And there was no hospital that would treat me because they were afraid to treat a victim of military torture that might run them into trouble too. So to cut a long story short, in 2006, I was declared wanted by the president for my work as a journalist. And I had to flee the country. Luckily, I was able to escape. And it became a journey of just running from one country to the other. 1 month after arrival in Senegal, which is the neighboring country, I had to flee again. And I remember I was married for 2 months. Before leaving the Gambia, I couldn't talk to my family. I was hearing stories that they were arrested, they were put in detentions, they were tortured. It was just scary for me. And my pictures were on TV. I was in Senegal, seeing myself being announced as a wanted person. And luckily, some agencies came together, helped me to move to Ghana, which is a little bit far from Gambia, just to get some space. And in Ghana, I was supported by the U.S. Embassy to get resettled, just like the typical refugee process. It took 1 year because they wanted to expedite it. Luckily for me, I did not stay that long, 10, 15 years, like the other refugees. 1 year, I was resettled. But you know what? It was a year of hell. I was sick. I was paranoid, scared. I did not know anybody. And it was just so painful. I had no idea what was going to become of my life. And luckily, I was resettled in Rhode Island. So this book is mainly that story of challenge and suffering and determination to tackle the dictatorship, but the triumph of escape and rebuilding a second life.
So where can the book be purchased?
On Amazon.
Oh, okay.
So it's on Amazon, both on Kindle and paperback.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So you've been busy since you've been here. Only 7 years, 8 years?
Yes, well, it's a little bit more. I've been here for 12 years.
12 years.
It's going to be 13 in May.
Okay.
And in that, yeah, very busy. You know, I worked at Rhode Island Housing, the state mortgage agency, for 5 years.
Yes.
And I resigned to start working on establishing the Refugee Dream Center. And now, after 5 to 6 years, the Refugee Dream Center has 7 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff. We have about $500,000 budget a year. We serve about 300 refugees from different parts of the world and from different ethnicities and countries of origin. And then I was going to school too. My wife joined me 2 years after arrival. We bought a home after 4 years of coming to the U.S. We have 2 kids who are 8 and 9 years old. My mom joined me. I went to school, got a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and I'm graduating this spring with a PhD.
Very good. Excellent. You have been very busy.
Very, very busy, yeah. But I wanted to be a mirror to most refugees that despite the challenges and pain, it's opportunities, and it can happen. There are opportunities in this country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Omar, you're an impressive young man, and I say young man compared to me. But you've done well with your life in helping other people. Let me ask you this: how many languages are spoken at the Refugee Dream Center? Do you have any idea?
Well, with our count, 15 languages.
15.
15 languages. So within the staff alone, we have the capacity to interpret every language that comes in. Somebody comes in. At least the clients that we have.
Very good.
From the Middle Eastern, Caribbean, African countries.
So the staff basically is made up of people from some of these countries.
Yes, there are some people from some Americans, because there are certain things that there's somebody who is qualified who does it.
Yes.
But majority is people from these different ethnic communities.
Very good.
So that is culturally attuned, but also people see people who are like them. Sure. And the model is refugees helping fellow refugees, so that the ones who pass through are helping the recently arrived. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So what do your kids think about your activity?
Well, I mean, I try to take them anywhere I have an event or speak. I spoke in the class of the 4th grader last week, and I think he told me, I didn't know the whole of your story. So I think they're still learning.
Yes. Trust me, they'll never get it all. My children are older than you, and they still have to ask me what I did. So, yeah, I understand. Well, that's it. And your wife, is she working or in school or?
Yes, she works at the center as she's a co-founder. She helped me found it, and she's the case manager there too. Okay. And she's also in school trying to finish her degree in public health.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So the whole family stays busy.
Yeah, very, very busy. Hopefully it will dwindle down a little bit, in the coming months.
Is there anything new coming down the pike that the Dream Center is going to try to do that you haven't started quite yet?
Right. Well, I mean, it's always a challenge, you understand, there's this sort of refugee ban / Muslim ban. I keep talking about, let's say, Somali and Syrian refugees.
Yes.
They are part of that ban.
Yes.
They are not, most of them are not coming now. And a lot of the people that I'm talking about, there are people who've come already, like 1 year and
Yes.
further, but not newly arriving. They're completely part of that ban. So is this a target that affects the refugee population and then or half of the refugee population, and that affects those we are serving here, because the way the refugee process goes is, when people arrive, they could be able to petition for their family members who are also wandering there in camps.
Trump's trying to stop that.
Exactly, and if I was affected, my wife wouldn't have been able to join me 2 years after arriving, and that's why it's highly traumatizing for refugees who are here, because they're feeling like they're isolated, and the promise that was given to them is not kept. Some of them, I had a couple from Syria who came to my office and said, I want to go back to Jordan, to the camp, because my family is all there.
Yeah.
And so it's just mitigating that trauma and that kind of difficulty people are experiencing, and giving them hope of the future that we're challenged with. But we organize this World Refugee Day, to come back to your question, every year in June, usually the last week of June, which is usually a big festival, and we bring in partners and the entire community, hundreds of people celebrate for a whole day, an outdoor event.
Where do you do that at?
We mostly do it at the parking lot at the DARE building, but sometimes we look for bigger open spaces.
Now, do you have a connection at all with Oasis?
Yeah, Oasis International. Actually, they gave me an award this year, last year in November.
Very good.
So Oasis Morris is a great supporter and partner. So, and then they are also, we have a lot of supporters from the African American community, from the African leadership community, and then the local political leadership in many aspects. The mayor of Providence is very amazingly supportive, and of course the Rhode Island Foundation and the local departments of health and Department of Labor in sustaining some of our programs.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Omar, you've done a lot in the few years you've been here, probably more than some Americans who've been born here and lived here for 20 and 30 years. And it's good that you're able to make that commitment and understand the need. We're almost out of time, but I just wanted to, again, thank you for being on the show. And we're about to have you back in the future. Let us know how things are going at the Dream Center.
Great.
Okay?
Great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. We have run out of time, but I want to thank today's guest, Omar Ba, and you, the viewers, for tuning in to another edition of In Another Opinion. A special thanks to PBS for making this program possible. Give us your opinion on Facebook or Twitter at In Another Opinion. I'm your host, Peter Wells. What's your opinion?
Someone gave, someone donated, someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy.